All right, I think we're recording.
We are.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Danica Todd. I'm the owner of Supporting West Ashley, and I have with me today Dr. Tiffany Noonan from Epic Parenting. And we're going to take a minute to talk about appropriate developmental stages for your children while trying to school at home, and the differences between homeschooling and public schooling your children virtually.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here today, Danica. And in this odd and interesting time, I wanted to thank anyone who's getting the opportunity to watch this for exploring different ways of doing things. If you're acknowledging that things are feeling a little strange or they're feeling overwhelming, for taking the time yourself to learn about ways that we can do this in a way that feels better for you as a family and for us as a community. I was starting to put together an actual PowerPoint presentation yesterday. I'm like, these are the points I want to talk about. And then it didn't feel right. And I got to reflect on, we're talking about learning in a way that's different. And I'm going to be demonstrating today how we can learn without necessarily having PowerPoint presentations and key points up on the board, but we can do it in conversation. So if you're watching this recording in the future, I want you to know that you can reach out to Danica, you can reach out to myself, she can put you in touch with me, and any questions you have or any struggles that may be coming up, I would love for you to reach out. Know that there are resources, that there are people that are willing to listen and maybe help you see it from a different mindset. So I did want to take a moment to just introduce myself in case you don't know who I am. Many people don't. Like Danica said, my name is Dr. Tiffany Noonan. I am a pediatrician, trained, practiced. I graduated medical school in 2001, so I'm old at this point, and practiced general pediatrics for 15 years before 6 years ago choosing to leave clinical practice to found my business, which is Epic Parenting, which stands for Empowered, Peaceful, Inspired, and Connected. And the reason why I made that transition is because when I was in practice, it became obvious to me that the real help that I could bring to families was in helping them learn how to connect, helping them learn how to communicate. And I came to that place very honestly by struggling as a mom, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, and not really feeling like I had the skills to create the life with my children that I wanted. And I was tired of yelling at them to put on their pajamas at the end of the night. And I dug into how we can do this differently. I learned how to change my mindset and my skill set to create a family at home that felt amazing, where I no longer was feeling overwhelmed with my son having tantrums, where there wasn't yelling every single night, where there was natural cooperation. And that felt amazing for me. And that was the work that I wanted to really bring into the world. So that's where I've been focused for the past 6 years. And in addition, if you would have told me 7 years ago that I was going to be a homeschooling mom, I would have told you were insane. Did not think that it would be something that I would be doing. However, when it came time for my oldest son to go into kindergarten, and he had been in preschool before that, I decided to do things differently. I wanted to try something new. And I wanted to share today with you some of my experience in that, because it did not go well in the beginning. Our amount of disconnection and our fighting increased when we tried it. We originally enrolled in a virtual public school. So we were homeschooling, but we were doing the online virtual public school. And my son's a kindergarten dropout. By December, we had to make the decision as a family that that particular way of learning was not working. We were getting into arguments about the way lessons were getting done. I had a ton of learning to do to let go of the way I thought school happened. Obviously, as a physician, I had a lot of formal school in the traditional sense. And although I knew I wanted to do it different for my family, I still kind of found myself worried that I was not going to be teaching my child properly and that I had to fall back on this routine. So by December of his kindergarten year, my 5-year-old at the time looked at me and said, I don't want to do the lessons because they're boring and stupid, which I had already decided, but I felt like it was my obligation to make him do them. And I realized that I got to listen to him, I got to trust him, and we got to do this a different way. Now, that may or may not be helpful for you, right? So there's a whole lot of people right now that are thrown into schooling at home, which is not the same thing as homeschooling or unschooling that I do right now. It may not be anything that you ever desired to do and that you weren't really that interested in getting curious about, but here we are today, right? And that is a responsibility that now is falling on your shoulders. And there's a meme going around Facebook that I think is a beautiful concept. And I think it's something we should all take to heart. But at the same time, the part of the conversation I wanted to have today is, this is great, but how do you make this happen, right? So it is from an educator, although the actual source is not quoted on the meme, so I don't know who it originally came from. But it says, you've probably seen it, don't worry about them regressing in school. Every single kid is in this boat and they all will be okay. When we are back in the classroom, we will all course correct and meet them where they are. Teachers are experts at this. Don't pick fights with your kids because they don't want to do math. Don't scream at your kids for not following the schedule. Don't mandate 2 hours of learning if they are resisting it. If I can leave you with one thing, it's this. At the end of all of this, your kids' mental health will be more important than their academic skills. And how they felt during this time will stay with them long after the memory of what they did during those 4 or more weeks is long gone. So keep that in mind every single day. Beautiful sentiment. Maybe a really important one to print out or write out for people. But it doesn't tell you how to do that, how to let it go, how to say this is okay, and how to discuss this with your child. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today, because I don't know what position you're in. I've done some research and looked, and Danica, you can share with me what your kids are experiencing, but there doesn't seem like there's a general, like, this is what schools are doing consensus. That from when I've polled my clients, when I've polled people on Facebook, it's different for every school. Some schools have teachers maintaining strict schedules where they're meeting online and they're still keeping a class schedule. Some schools have packets of worksheets that have gone home and a thumbs up, good luck. And there's a mix and a huge variety in between. So I want to be able to, that I can talk to whatever your situation is and talk about skills to get through it, even if you don't have the freedom to say, well, it doesn't matter. I want to empower you to know that you always have that freedom, by the way, but we're going to talk about that. But Danica, what are you experiencing? Because I know that you homeschool one of your children, but the other two are in public school.
Yes. So the hardest part with the homeschooling child, honestly, is that we don't have the normal resources we have because everybody is using them. So the servers are going down. So even the resources we have with Macy, we're struggling. So even his routine is messed up because everybody's home, including his mom, every day for a minimum of 3 weeks. And then some of his resources are going down. So he's more unschooled. I know that there isn't really even a definition for unschooling. Unschooling just means you're not really using a strict guideline or schedule or curriculum. And then after that, each family is doing what works best for them. And so, yeah, we're just pivoting with that as we can. And then Harper, she's in pre-K. So it's interesting how intense her curriculum is for a grade that actually isn't required. So her pre-K class is part of the elementary school, and we're getting videos to watch. She has 2 o'clock class today with her teacher, and she actually likes worksheets. She is one of those. So she does not care about the videos or anything else, but she'll do the worksheets. So we are doing the worksheets with her. She knows she doesn't have to, but it fills the time. And then with Dharma, she's in 8th grade, and it's rigorous. It's rigorous. They are not meeting collectively at the same time, but they do have short-term dates that they need to have things uploaded onto the
Mhm.
Teams app by. I think they're testing online.
Mhm.
The things they can't upload, like projects and things, they have to do the project, take a picture with their phone, upload the project.
Mhm.
But she did share that nothing's new except for algebra. So it's very rigorous, but they're not actually learning new information.
Right. So it's example that everything's different, right? Three
Right.
different kids, three different ways of learning. And that's a lot for a family. Like, let's just admit that as the parents, that's a lot on the parents that are not accustomed to doing this.
And then some of
So,
us are still working full time from home now, which is confusing people.
yeah,
As you said
yeah,
yesterday, to me, they're used to having my undivided attention
yeah,
when I'm home, and
right.
they are not. I'm working in 1 hour increments with like
Mhm.
2 to 3 hours off. I'm definitely not pulling a full time job. I'm not massaging
Right,
people in my garage, but yet.
right. So, yeah. So, and I have to admit, I kind of already knew Danica's answers there when I asked her, and I wanted to use that as a lead in to think about how can I empower you to feel empowered in this process. And part of that is looking at our mindset and giving ourselves grace for the way all of this works out, and committing to one thing, which is maybe having the mind of a child ourselves as adults. And what I mean by that is curiosity. If this isn't feeling good, how can we think about it differently? If today did not go very well, how can we open up to it feeling a little bit better tomorrow? And start asking those questions that are empowering, like, how can we do this differently, instead of being very stringent on this is the way we're going to do it. Because when we're trying to control things that way, we are probably not looking at the reason underneath that we're trying to control it. So I wanted to remind everybody, think back to what you learned in pre-K. Think back to what you learned in 8th grade. How much of that do you remember? I went to school for a really long
I
time.
can't help her with the algebra.
I went to school for a really long time. I don't know shit about history. I don't. And I memorized lots of facts. I don't think the value of our education system is learning the facts as much as learning how to learning how to have an open mind, learning how to be curious. So we can set that example from the beginning and say, you know what? I am going to choose to be empowered about what is the intention that I want for my family to get out of this. Do I want them to learn how to use resources to look things up? Do I want them to learn how to think and how to pivot? Do I want them to learn that it is okay to be flexible? By giving yourself the permission to do that, and keeping in mind really that algebra may not be something that she's going to use on a regular basis. And if it is, she's going to learn it again. And being able to say, I get it, this is hard. I am not qualified to teach you in this, but I am qualified to help you find a resource. Why don't we check out Khan Academy and see if we can watch a video on it if you don't understand the teaching that came back? Maybe we can take a break from it. But really empower you to say, I'm here to teach them how to think outside of the box, how to find the information, and really let go of thinking that what they're learning, the actual facts of what they're learning right now, are going to be making a huge difference in their life. They're not. I'm going to tell you right now, probably 50% of what I learned in medical school was still learning how to think, how to research, how to find the answers. And it's not, I cannot recite the Krebs cycle to you right now. Not important in my life. It's not. But there was times in my life where I thought it was very important and I needed to understand how to do all of it. But that's not the world that we live in. Right? So being able to be a little bit like, I can help them. And then giving ourselves grace to recognize, what is everyone going through? Right? So what do your children need from you from this learning experience? Because everything is a little bit off kilter. So they may have complained about going to school every single day that they had to go to school. But that doesn't mean that school didn't give them stability, certainty, a feeling or a sense of control. It doesn't, they got social connection from school. So even the child that may have complained every single day that they didn't want to go to school may not be acting the same at home, or maybe feeling overwhelmed, and they don't have words to say that they're feeling uncertain, that they're feeling a sense of stress. And what they need in that moment is different for everyone. So for some, it may be, I need to get my schoolwork done because that is giving me a sense of control in my life. That is giving me a feeling that I still have some stability, or that it still feels a little bit normal. In other younger kids, they may be resisting it, but then you can still say, well, how can I give them a sense of security or a sense of connection in other ways in our life, that we don't have to create conflict over this? And we may find that when you're doing that it gets more normal. But let's just address, home is not where they have been doing their schoolwork, except for their homework, for 6 months, however many 6 months in school's been in session, or for however many years that they've been in school. So this is a new environment for them, and it is not something that they naturally have connected to sitting down and learning. So that's where some flexibility also is important to come in. Maybe they're going to be doing their schoolwork in smaller blocks throughout the day. They might need more breaks than you would expect that they take at school. They're probably not going to be sitting at a desk with their feet straight in front of them, waiting for a bell to go off, telling them when the next learning thing is, because that's not what home means to them. Their mom goes to work, and when she's not at work, she's present with them. So it can be a challenge. It's still a challenge for my children. I work from home. I school from home. I take care of the house from home. This is a constant juggle that I've been doing for 6 years now. I don't always do it beautifully, and I don't always do it gracefully, and I don't always do it without saying, I'm losing my mind and I can't do this. So can we give ourselves grace when we feel that way? And then say, what can I let go of? And usually at that time, I get to let go of all of the stories of what I'm supposed to be doing and ask myself the one question: what would feel good now? What would feel good for my children right now? Maybe it's to go jump on the trampoline and say, forget all of this. Some days it's, we need to take a mental health break because the world's a little crazy right now. There's stuff I can't control. And what I can control is, what am I focused on and what am I feeling about? And is it worth the fight and the struggle to do an arithmetic problem today? It's probably not. I can ask you, if you're feeling like the school is mandating things that you're like, this isn't working in our environment, reach out to the teachers, reach out to the school administration and say, what are the real expectations going to be? Help me get some clarity. I know that we're not having the state testing. I understand that. Are they truly being held accountable to this? And then as a family, you still get to say, regardless of what the school says, what is working for us? Because there's going to be flexibility in it. Not every family has internet that they can rely on reliably. Not every family, we're all in a different position. And if you're currently worried about basic physiologic needs, right? So we're sitting here having this call, we're in a house, we have internet, there's electricity, and we probably have some food in the pantry. Not every family has that at this current moment. Those children are going to have a different experience. And if you're in that position, let's talk about how we can get you some security and some physiologic security, because there are people that are willing to help, right? I'm not going to be all that worried about your kid adding right now if we're worried about your kid eating. Reach out. But there's still those concerns for a lot of us that there's I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur where the money's coming in. And that affects the learning environment for our children as well. And we get to acknowledge if that's where our mind is, what can we do to help our mental health? Because the kids are picking up on that as well. And ask them. A lot of people don't ask their children, how are you feeling about this? What are you missing? What are you liking? How would you like this to look? And by empowering yourself, empowering your family to say, we can do this the way that feels good to us. What do we want to create? What do we want to vent about? What are we missing? And how can we add that in, right? So if what they're missing is connection, can we reach out and have a Zoom tea party for the preschoolers where they just get to look and see each other? That's so much more important than whether or not they add some numbers together. The same thing for the high school kids. Maybe that extra hour of video time, game time where they're connecting and playing with each other isn't such a big deal if they are playing with friends and they're feeling like they're getting that sense of connection, right? So empowering yourself to say, how can we do this differently? And how can we do it from a place that feels peaceful and that feels good? If you're fighting and you're head to tail, I want to remind you, a stressed mind is not retaining information. When your child is, I have a client whose child has had some meltdowns about some math concepts, and the mom is like, I don't know how to help her because she's not open to it. You're right. In that meltdown, she's not open to it. Listen, I'm very honest. I have to admit, I moved my son's long division from his workbook to the whiteboard yesterday just to try to change our thing because I was frustrated with him not seeming to pay attention. And I think he was just trying to get me to lead him to the answer. And I kind of can do that sometimes. I'll be like, no. And he was like, 9. I'm like, wait a minute, you're not even thinking. And I was starting to get frustrated. But as I admitted to Danica before the call, for me, yesterday was a challenging day. Not because anything was wrong in my house, but because I was paying attention to the news and the uncertainty and feeling everything else. I got to apologize to my son for being a little snippy. And I got to say, how can we do this differently? And we got to find a way to make it more fun for him to get through his math. The day before, I gave him a mental health break because he was like, I'm tired. I don't feel well. I'm okay with that. Whoops, the work is going to get done. How can we do it in a way that's peaceful to keep that in mind, empowered and peaceful? And then if there's flexibility in the learning, if you've come to let go of some of the expectations, how can we be inspired about it? So look at what your kid's learning, right? And if it's preschool or if it's the younger ages and it's fractions, maybe you get to cook a recipe together. Maybe we can be a little bit more inspired in the way that we're doing this in a way that feels fun. We can draw in other ways of learning these concepts without it feeling stressful. And that takes getting curious about it as well. I unschool my children as well. We don't follow a strict plan. I'm not a radical unschooler. And what I mean by that is I think a radical, my concept or my understanding anyway, is that radical unschoolers really, the kids just learn what they want when they want, and there's really not a lot of direction. I have not allowed myself to be that trusting of life is learning yet. I know that life is learning, but I also have to get through some work during the day, and my children have the responsibility of learning. But there are days where I can say, what are you interested in learning for science today? What are you interested in learning about social sciences, humanities, history today? How can we learn this in a different way? What are we interested in learning about art or instrument or music or creativity? And be very broad in the category of learning so that they get to pick something. You may learn something about your child's interest. They can develop a new skill or a new ability to learn by looking into those facts. So getting curious in that way and looking into what they're inspired to learn. And you can even suggest things by looking at their curriculum or what they've been sent home with that make it more fun. Maybe it's watching a movie. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
Yeah, one of the things I can share with Harper is that they actually started her on sight words, which shocked me. She's 5 now, but basically it's a 4-year-old classroom. I was like, we're not doing sight words.
Yeah.
The rebellious Danica came out. But she had homework where she had to match the capital letter with the lowercase letter. And we just did them in small batches and turned them upside down and played the memory game. And they were just on regular printed paper, so she could actually see the letters through the other side. Like when she looked down at them face down, she could still kind of tell. And she was picking them out correctly based on knowing them in reverse or backwards. What would that be, right? Because if it's the C's this way, but then it's flipped up, she could find them.
Like the mirror image. I think it would probably be the mirror image.
She could find them correctly, upside down. I'm like, we're fine.
Life is learning. Yeah.
I was shocked. So high five to her teacher. She could read the words for the colors so that when she was supposed to fill it in, I was like, great. So you know what? We'll just make sure she doesn't forget those things over the summer.
Yeah.
But she'll be fine. They'll be
fine. They all are going to be fine. That's the most important message that I wanted to say today is that having an expectation that it's going to look like school is going to set you up for fighting, conflict, and power struggles. And I don't know about you, but I've never once truly won a power struggle with a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or any child. Honestly, I don't care how old they are. The power struggle doesn't work. And when it comes to learning, it doesn't matter if you make them do the work. You cannot make them learn it. So if they're ticked off and they're angry and they're like, I'm going to get this done, it's just going to be done, it's really working against what we ultimately want, which is for them to be open to learning, for them to be curious, for them to find the fun and the joy in it. And that is a beautiful lesson that I want you to carry forward. To do this in a way that is empowered, peaceful, inspired, and connected is to be willing to recognize when our stories of what education is supposed to look like get to be put aside to realize what is our real intention with this. What do we want this to feel like? And getting honest about what learning really is, right? So it's not always being right. It's not always understanding. Learning is being curious. Learning is being open to discovering new things. And this is a really interesting and bizarre time in history. And there are so many opportunities for learning without ever having to do any of the curriculum things that the school said, just by talking, just by getting outside, just by exploring new opportunities. So, but if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're like, that's great, kumbaya, not going to work in my house, this is the struggle I'm going through, I can't know what that struggle is unless you reach out. And I am here for complimentary consultations to talk to people to help them address something in a way that's different and help them make it work in a way that feels good in their family. Always, quite honestly, not just during coronavirus. I've been doing this for 6 years. My message and my story has not changed when the world has changed recently. And I am really here to help people and serve them through this. And there's always one free initial consultation to talk about what's going on in your family and help you with tools for moving forward. It's not a sales pitch. It's truly to be able to provide some help for you to feel better. So reach out. Anytime.
Great. Well, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I am honored to be here, and we are all in this together. It's a different learning experience for everybody. I mean, 2 months ago, maybe some people 2 months ago could have imagined we would have been going through this, but let's go back to the beginning of November. Before, the very first diagnosis, could never have imagined that this is what we'd be experiencing in our life. So a little grace and a little kindness for all of us as we cry or yell or find joy and happiness in the little things. It's going to be a wave. It's going to come up and down with your children, with ourselves. And we get to do it together. We get to reach out and realize that maybe one of your friends on Facebook is posting that they've turned their living room into a classroom, and we're feeling a little bad that our living room has a pile of laundry the size of Mount Vesuvius. Just speaking from experience, as I'm looking across my office/living room at the laundry pile that I wouldn't think that we would have, considering we're not going out, and realize that every experience is different, and they may be having a strict classroom, but fighting, you don't know. No comparison. We're all in this together.
That's the hard part with social media, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Or that meme that I read, a beautiful concept. But if you read it and you say, that's what I'm going to create, and 5 minutes later, you're yelling about the fact someone's not doing a worksheet, you don't have to go into guilt and shame because you're not making it happen. You get to say, okay, I'm human. Because I got to tell you, I was committed to not yelling at my children, and I had transformed the way I connected to them. And then when my son started kindergarten and we had spent 6 months bonding after I had left medicine, and then we were having fights again, I was feeling bad about the fact that I was suddenly no longer able to apply these concepts, and I got to relearn some new things. So it's nice when we look at it and say, that's what I want to create. But when we find ourselves in the midst of the muck and it feels chaotic and we're not doing it, we get to forgive ourselves as well and say, well, I did the best I could yesterday and it did not feel good. How could I do it a little bit differently today? And it's all going to be okay. And just say lots of I love yous. I love you. I'm sorry for losing my friend.
Well, if you're watching this on recording, I'm going to have Tiffany's website and her email linked along with the recording. Thank you again, Tiffany, for
Thank
joining
you.
me today. And tomorrow we have Tara. She's doing a singing bowl session. So hopefully we'll get to see some more people then. Have a great day.
Right.